How many deals should I get? So I want to talk a little bit about if you're putting the work in and you're following the systems on the MLS that I'm showing you earlier on how to filter and how to make offers. I want to walk through the math of how many deals you should get. A big part of being consistent and getting results is having proper expectations. So one of the big things I see that many people do is, including myself, is we have way higher expectations than what reality is. So we get frustrated very easily when we put a lot of work in and we don't get the results that we think we're going to get. But the reality is, and the secret is the knowing exactly how much you need to do in order to get a result. That way you can take and repeat it and keep doing it. You know, if I put this much work in every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, we're going to get this many deals. So for us, when we were doing 4 counties and doing many deals every year, about 17 MLS deals, it would require about 2 hours a day's work, 5 days a week consistently to get about 17 deals a year. And now what I'm going to teach you is how to do one county or do multiple zip codes and how much you should expect. So let's start off and we'll jump right into it. So one county, I always like to start people off with one county. Now, when I say one county, if your county is really big and there's stuff like in my county, AA County, and Arundel County, we have stuff that's over an hour away. So when I say a county, I'm probably not going to do something that's over an hour away. So for me, I might just pull the county, but I'll usually just, look over anything that's in way too far from me and really focus on the stuff within maybe like a half hour to 40-minute radius. That's how far I go. You might decide that you only want to go a half hour, whatever that is. Decide your target area and then focus on that. But we're going to use a county for the purposes of seeing exactly what works and how it works. So if you were to do a county, I usually find it takes about an hour a day consistently to do a county, and that's going to be looking at a decent amount of houses. If you do that hour a day, you're going to find about 10 to 30 new properties each day. So some days it's only going to be 10, some days it'll be 30, just depending on how many new houses are on the market or how few. And from that, you're going to only find about 1 to 3 of those houses that are distressed. And what that means is, let's pretend there's 10 houses. Out of 10 houses, most of them are going to be retail properties that look really nice and that are going to be for, homeowner to buy, not for us. The things we always focus on are distressed properties that need work. With that being said, let's just pretend that 2 out of the 10 houses that are new are houses that look pretty beat up and make some sense for us. Well, they're the two we focus on. So in one day, we might see 10 to 30 new properties, but we're really only going to be paying attention to the 1 to 3 that are distressed and in bad shape and they're fixer-uppers, so we can bring value to them. With that being said, of those 1 to 3 properties we see, there's usually 0 to 1 that are qualified for us. Now, how we qualify a property is we want to know that it's priced either pretty close to where we need to be. When I say that, meaning within like 10 to 20% of where we want to be, or that there's a very specific situation that we think will work. So for us, if it's a standard listing with a homeowner, we usually assume they do have the ability to take considerably less if the house is in pretty bad shape. So we would probably want to make a phone call. But if we seen that the house was priced at 100 and we would need to offer 60 and it's a bank, well, we know that the bank won't take that big of a discount that early on the market. So for us, it's more of a follow-up game at that point. So that property would not be qualified, and we would just throw it into the follow-up list and check in later to make and see if it's sold or not in maybe 30 to 60 days. Because in 30 to 60 days, the bank will be more open to taking a much lower offer. They probably will even reduce their price at that point. But the key, we know, and we can make a safe assumption that we know the bank has a process, and they won't sell their properties for huge discounts until they've got some days on the market. And then it's pretty much a free-for-all for them. They could take anything at that point. They have different systems for it. So if we do 1 hour a day, we do one day, well, we're probably not going to have a lot to look at. So day one, this is going to be for fun. We're not going to get a lot done. Now let's look at that and say we did that same activity, 1 to 3 qualified each week, right? Now we're doing that every day for a week. Well, we have not enough. That's the key. We end up just not having enough properties. So even for 1 week, we can do it every day. We don't get enough properties. It ends up just being a good try. Like I'm just saying, if you take and do this 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, don't expect to get a deal in your first week. Now, am I saying that you couldn't get lucky and get a deal? Absolutely. The math is against you, though. So if you were, say, 5 days into this and you get no deal, know that you have not even scratched the surface yet. Your first week is really just learning and getting a feel for what's going on on and getting used to your process. Honestly, maybe even your first month is that. So this is a great expectation to set for yourself that, in week one, I'm really just trying to get a feel for what's going on. Again, I'm not saying you can't get a deal, and I hope you do. But if you don't, I want to make sure I manage your expectations. Don't give up, because it's way too early to give up. And you can even see this market is too tough. This is when stuff starts to set in, like negative thoughts like, oh man, I've worked so hard, everyone's paying too much. Most people, when they tell me they worked MLS, and I really call them out on like, okay, how many hours did you put in? How many days did you do it? How consistent were you? I usually find out that most people give up in the first, like sometimes as little as a day or two, and often in the first few weeks. They won't even put that much time into it because their expectations weren't set correctly. And that's a big part of why we want to do this video. I want to set your expectations correctly. So imagine if we did the same activity 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, and we did it for a month. Now we're talking about 4 to 12 qualified properties that make sense. So now looking at 4 to 12 properties, now there's going to be probably one of those properties that we got a shot on, because it's just a math model, right? If we got 12 properties potentially on the high end, well, there's a good chance 1 or 2 of those we might be in the game. We might be able to squeeze a deal out of there. So you start to see 4 to 12 qualified offers. Now we're putting offers in equals 1 contract. And that's a very true statement. So based on what I'm telling you right now, you literally might have to put an hour a day up to a month into this in order to get your first deal. And that's all saying that you're doing a good job and you're being diligent. If you really suck at this, it could take even longer. And if you're exceptionally good at it, maybe you'll do it even sooner. The key, though, is that you're willing to commit to get good at it. I can tell you that my MLS guy would put about an hour a day per county, and he would do a couple counties, about a couple hours a day, and he could find anywhere from 15 to 20 properties a year on the MLS. And this is a free source, and he got really good at the follow-up and really good at being consistent, so he always got what he needed. So you start to create 1 to 3 contracts. Now, the reason we say contracts is because not every contract is going to turn into a deal, right? We might put some things under contracts and we can't find a buyer for it. Maybe we decide we don't want to keep it and give our deposit up. So not all of these will be deals, but we know that we should bring in about 10 to 50K in profit. So if you look at this, this is very easy. If you get good at this, you could start creating 10 to 50K a month in profit from the MLS by buying 1 to 3 houses. Now, all it requires is that you do it an hour a day and you follow the systems that I'm teaching, and you make sure you have the ability to buy a property and either renovate it or wholesale it. So if we wholesale, we can probably expect 10K. If we rehab it, we could make as much as 50K, or depending if we do 2 or 3 deals, we might be able to get up to 50K with wholesales, or 20 or 30. I mean, these are all real profits. The key is we got to crack the code, and it can take sometimes to do your first deal. It might take you 2 months of doing the MLS. I want you to ask yourself a question. I want you really to think about this. If it took 2 months of putting 1 hour a day in for 2 months, are you willing to change your life? Are you willing to make that commitment? Because if you're not, then you probably won't win at the MLS. Excuse me. But if you are, there's a really good chance you're going to start to get some amazing results, and you're going to start doing something that a lot of people aren't willing to do. Creating money from a free source that all you have to do is get on a computer and play. It's like playing a video game and just make a few phone calls, make a few offers. It's a lot of fun. I love the MLS. That's how I got started in the business. And even till my whole 9-10 years I've been doing this, I've been doing stuff on the MLS, and it has gotten tougher because we're not in as bad of a market. But you know what? We're doing just as many deals this year, if not more this year, than we've ever done, because we've made this different system. We've made it better. We've made it more efficient, and that's how we get these deals. Sorry about that. I've actually have something in my throat. So now let's look at it for a quarter. I'm going to jump in, and I really want to multiply this now. Let's think about what this looks like if we do 3 months of an hour a day. Now we're talking 12 to 36 qualified leads, 3 to 6 contracts. Very reasonable to think that you're going to get at least a deal a month, maybe sometimes 2 deals a month once you get good at it. But let's just pretend that we really sucked at this, and maybe we didn't even hit the numbers that I think you should get. Maybe you are an underperformer, and you're just not as good at it as some people are. And let's just imagine in 3 months you did an hour a day and you got 1 deal. I want you to think about that. Would it be worth putting 3 months in to get one deal, and that one deal you end up renovating it, making 30K, or maybe wholesaling it, making $10,000? It doesn't really matter how long it takes you to do your first deal. It just matters that once you do your first deal, I will make you a promise that once you do that, it unlocks the code in your head and it will allow you to repeat the process. Especially if you're following a process like this and you're following a system. This system's really amazing because sometimes people get lucky and get a deal and then they can't repeat the process. But I promise you, if you learn to make this work, you'll be able to cash in on this like an ATM machine for the rest of your career. So you hear me getting very passionate about the MLS, but cracking the code to the MLS is the secret to making a lot of money. And so few people want to admit it, but the reason they say the MLS sucks is because they just aren't willing to put the work in. They're not willing to work for 3 months to get their first deal. And so that in the future they could do a deal a month, every month, consistently. Like an ATM, we do 1 to 2 deals every single month on the MLS, and all we have to do is jump on a computer and check things out. And imagine that in that 3 to 6 contracts, we have a fallout rate of 10 to 20%. Some of these deals don't go through, and we're starting to look at 30 to 150K in profit. Now, these are not like crazy numbers by any means. I would say that if you were only looking at 30K in profit over 3 months of work, that would be a pretty bad result. But let's just think about that being your worst result. That's 120K a year. For most people, that's enough on just the MLS. That is enough for you to quit your job. And that's only if you take and do one deal at, say, 30K and you renovate it, or if you do 3 deals that are wholesale deals, you could easily make 30K. But if you really get to the top end of this, you could start doing about 6 deals and maybe you renovate 5 or 6 of those deals. That's a steady business. Now we're talking 150K in income. That's pretty serious money. I really love the feel of that, and that's the kind of money we want to do. That's what we're thinking. Remember, this is just each quarter, but imagine if you're at the 150 and then you times that. So, I mean, last year we had a great year in the MLS, and we made more money last year on just the MLS than I've actually made like, probably my 5th year in business, doing like way many more deals. I think 17 deals on the MLS, and I think maybe 5 years into the business, I was doing close to 70 or 80 deals a year. I actually made more income last year on the MLS than I did spending tons of money on marketing and doing all that stuff. Now, you're not going to hear me. I love marketing and I love doing all those things, but I always feel like start with the free deal sources first and make sure you master those so you can make as much money as possible with the free stuff. And the MLS ends up being just a great place it's a sandbox. It's a great place to practice your technique. If you can't make the MLS work, then this is a time for you to look in the mirror and just see what you're doing, see if you're communicating correctly. It's a time for really deep self-assessment. And if you can make the MLS work, then you pretty much can make any other source work. So I start with the MLS as my top 10 things. I love the MLS because it's free, it's consistent, and it is very beatable. It is extremely beatable. Even in this market, I'm talking to you now in 2018, we're at the height of like just a great incline. And in this last year from 17 to 18, we were able to do 17 deals for over 300 plus K in income. So I'm very passionate about the MLS. I wanted to make sure this is my first one because I love to start students off here, because if you can master this, you can master anything.